Welcome to Chapter 9, Intelligence and Creativity lecture. So we're going to go ahead and do the rest of this chapter online through the various next 8 modules. So the focus here, as we've been going over the last couple of chapters, we started with Chapter 7, looking at cognition with Piaget and Vygotsky. And then we moved into Chapter 8, looking at information processing, which gets into the details of why you might see the various developmental changes along the way that we were discussing with Piaget and Vygotsky. And now we're going to focus on the idea of measuring intelligence and what is intelligence for that matter. So when we get into intelligence or the psychometric study of it, and psychometrics really is getting at the general idea of what is intelligence, and you can imagine that can be a challenge. Coming up with a definition for anything like that can take a matter of years. So when we talk about a psychometric approach towards intelligence, we're talking about a study of the mind or testing approach to intelligence. And the important thing to know is that intelligence is not fixed. It is changeable, and it is subject to various environmental influences. It also, though, is conceptualized as far as intelligence as a trait, which can be identified and measured and described in some way. And so by trait, we're saying something that does not change over time. And in psychology, we have a lot of these type of trait concepts. The idea of personality, for instance, is a trait concept. It's one where we do not change over time. And so the very first approach, the psychometric approach to trying to get at what is this intelligence, was started really with Charles Spearman, or at least he's one of the better known theorists way back in the 1920s. And his feeling was that we actually have a two-factor theory of intelligence. And the two factors can be seen with the little g and little s. So little g refers to a general mental ability, while the little s is referring to special abilities. So you have something like an overall intelligence score, that would be considered little g. And then the little s's could be your logical skills. That could be a specific skill. Or your, say, language skills. That's another special ability. And that all of the special abilities combined is what makes the little g or overall intelligence. So even to this day, Charles Spearman's two-factor theory runs pretty consistent with a lot of other theories that, of course, have gotten a lot more particular in the meantime. I mean, we have almost close to 100 years that have gone by since he came around. The other theory that we want to go ahead and discuss, or the approach, psychometric approach, was put by Cattell and Horn more in the late 1960s. And Cattell and Horn said that we really have two forms of intelligence. We have a fluid intelligence, and this is the ability to use your mind actively to solve novel problems, problems that you've never seen before. And crystallized intelligence. And crystallized intelligence is using your knowledge that you've acquired through schooling, life experience, to apply to problem solving. And so what we'll see is that our fluid intelligence and our crystallized intelligence both increase as we go through early childhood and into adolescence. But right around adolescence to emerging adulthood, what we see is a tapering off of our fluid intelligence skills, because fluid intelligence is really tightly tied to our physiological skills. And of course, as we've been talking about throughout the semester, you do see a decline in your physiological or physical abilities as you get older. Now, the good news is your crystallized intelligence continues to increase throughout your lifespan. And it's only until your 60s or 70s that you begin to see an overall decline in your intelligence level, because the crystallized intelligence, or what you know and all the expertise you bring, is unable to offset the declines in your fluid intelligence. Okay? So let's look at this next slide here. And this is just one example of a intelligence test kind of item. In this case, it would be one that's testing your fluid intelligence. And you can see here with your fluid intelligence, you're going to be looking for that lower right-hand corner and say, what is the empty space? So I'm going to go ahead and look at the patterns, and from the patterns I can see the next logical one is the figure 7 down there, or if you can read upside down, you knew that already. So the consensus, and we'll be talking further about ways to test these various types of intelligences in our next few modules here. But right now, what you need to come away with is the fact that there is a two-factor theory of intelligence by Charles Spearman with little g and little s. And then Cattell and Horn came up with their two factors of intelligence with fluid intelligence, which is novel problem solving, and crystallized intelligence, which is using your knowledge that you've gained through life experience and schooling to solve problems. The overall consensus right now about intelligence, it's often viewed as a hierarchy, kind of what Charles Spearman talked about originally. And it's going to include a general ability factor at the top, a few broad dimensions of ability next, and then a large number of specific abilities like things they call numerical reasoning, spatial discrimination, and word comprehension. And all of those kind of factor in and kind of bubble on up into your overall general ability. So we're going to go ahead and talk about measuring intelligence in our next module right now.